She plays business with her friends, my brother Ethan told his groomsmen in the suite adjacent to the reception hall. Cute little startup or whatever. She calls herself a CEO. They laughed. I heard it through the wall. I was in the bridal party prep room with his fiancée's sister. I kept adjusting my bridesmaid dress. Said nothing. The venue's main screen flickered on for the cocktail hour news feed. The CNN anchor's voice carried through the building. Breaking. Tech prodigy Alexis Monroe closes largest acquisition in Silicon Valley history. Datacorp purchases her AI company NextGen Analytics for $4.3 billion. Monroe, 29, becomes one of the youngest self-made billionaires in tech. In the groomsmen's suite, the sound of Ethan's champagne glass shattering against marble echoed through the hall. Ethan had always been the chosen one. I learned this at age 9 when Dad drove 3 hours to watch Ethan's debate team championship. I was 9, Ethan was 12. That same weekend I'd won first place in the state mathematics competition, beat 340 other students, youngest competitor in the advanced division. We'll celebrate when we get back, Mom had said on the phone. Ethan's debate is really important. It's the state finals. They came back at 11 p.m. Everyone was tired. We never celebrated. Ethan's debate trophy sat on the mantle for 6 years. Mine stayed in a box in my closet. At 13 I asked Dad to help me build a website. I'd taught myself basic HTML and wanted to create an online tutoring marketplace where students could connect with peer tutors. That's nice, honey, Dad said, not looking up from his laptop where he was reviewing Ethan's college application essays. Maybe over the summer. Summer came. Dad spent it driving Ethan to leadership conferences and college visits. I built the website myself using YouTube tutorials and a $15 book from the library. Took 3 months. By the time school started, I had 47 students registered and 12 peer tutors. We'd facilitated 118 tutoring sessions. I showed it to Mom during dinner. That's wonderful, sweetie. She smiled briefly, then turned to Ethan. Tell Dad about the internship offer from Senator Morrison's office. The conversation shifted. My website was never mentioned again. At 16, Ethan got a summer internship at a prestigious law firm through Dad's college roommate. The position paid $4,000 for 8 weeks. That same summer I asked if I could attend a coding boot camp. Real instruction, professional mentorship, career networking. Cost $3,500. That's a lot of money for a hobby, Dad said. Ethan's internship is career building. That's different from a recreational coding class. It's not recreational. It's professional development. Alexis, you're 16. You don't know what you want professionally yet. I worked 40 hours a week at a grocery store that summer. Saved $2,800. My manager gave me an extra shift when I explained what I was saving for, and I reached $3,500 by July. The coding bootcamp changed my life. I learned React, Node.js, Python database architecture. But more importantly, I learned I was good at this. Not just good, exceptional. The instructor, a former Google engineer named Sarah, pulled me aside after week 3. Alexis, you're operating at a senior developer level. Have you considered that this could be more than a hobby? My parents think I should focus on traditional academics. Your parents are wrong. She handed me her card. Stay in touch. When you're ready to build something real, call me. By 18, Ethan was at Princeton studying political science. Dad had donated $50,000 to the alumni fund the year before Ethan applied. He got in. I went to state on a partial academic scholarship. Paid the rest with student loans and my grocery store savings. Lived in the cheapest dorm. Worked 25 hours a week at the campus library. Nobody asked about my classes. The few times I mentioned computer science at family dinners, the conversation turned back to Ethan's latest achievement within minutes. Ethan made the Dean's Council. Ethan got an internship at Goldstein and Associates. Ethan is dating the daughter of a federal judge. What they didn't know, I was building something extraordinary in those library hours. At 19, I built an AI algorithm that could analyze massive datasets and identify patterns human analysts missed. I started with a simple question. Could AI predict customer behavior more accurately than traditional analytics? I tested it on publicly available e-commerce data. The AI's predictions were 87% accurate compared to 52% for traditional statistical methods. Sarah, my coding bootcamp instructor now working at a venture capital firm, saw the prototype. This is revolutionary, she said. Alexis, this could change how companies understand their customers. At 20, I launched NextGen Analytics from my dorm room. Sarah connected me with 3 small businesses willing to test the software. Within 6 months, their customer retention rates increased by an average of 43%. I raised $400,000 in seed funding from a small VC firm. Dropped out of college junior year. Dad called it impulsive and short-sighted. Mom asked if I was going through something. Ethan told his friends I'd dropped out to play with computers. Nobody asked about the business plan. Nobody asked about the funding. Nobody asked why I was confident enough to leave school. At 22, NextGen had 15 enterprise clients. Revenue, $8 million annually. I'd hired 12 employees, all of them smarter than me in their specific domains. At 24, Fortune 500 companies started noticing. Our AI didn't just predict customer behavior. It predicted market trends, supply chain disruptions, competitive threats. The applications were endless. We raised Series B funding, $45 million at a $180 million valuation. I own 67%. At 26, our client list included Microsoft, Amazon, 3 major banks and 7 Fortune 500 retailers. Revenue hit $95 million annually. The valuation reached $800 million. At 28, Datacorp, one of the largest enterprise software companies in the world, approached me about acquisition. Their first offer, $1.2 billion. I said no. We were growing too fast. 6 months later they came back, $2.8 billion. I said no again. Last month, at 29, they made a final offer, $4.3 billion cash, plus I'd join their board of directors and continue leading NextGen as an autonomous division. My 67% stake meant I'd personally receive $2.9 billion. I signed the papers 3 days ago. The deal closed yesterday. CNN broke the story this morning. Ethan's wedding was this afternoon. The wedding was at Ashford Estate, an exclusive venue that cost $85,000 to rent for the weekend. Ethan had proposed to Lauren 6 months ago. She was the daughter of a prominent real estate developer. Lauren's family is very successful, Mom had mentioned when announcing the engagement. Her father owns properties in 5 states. This is an important connection for Ethan. I'd been asked to be a bridesmaid. Not because we were close, we weren't, but because it would look strange if the bride's 3 sisters were in the wedding party and the groom's only sibling wasn't. I'd arrived Friday evening for the rehearsal dinner. Ethan had barely acknowledged me. Glad you could make it, he said, the way you'd greet a distant cousin you vaguely recognized. The rehearsal dinner was at the estate's private restaurant. 50 guests, open bar, speeches praising Ethan's accomplishments. Ethan graduated summa cum laude from Princeton, Dad announced, champagne glass raised. He's now a rising associate at Goldstein & Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. We couldn't be prouder. Mom added, and Lauren is perfect for him. Brilliant, accomplished, from a wonderful family. Nobody mentioned me. I sat at the end of the table eating salmon, checking my phone for updates from my legal team about the acquisition's final paperwork. Saturday morning I'd arrived early for bridesmaid photos. Lauren's sister Michelle was friendly. What do you do, Alexis? She asked while we were getting our hair done. I work in tech. Oh, fun. What kind of tech? Data analytics and AI. That's cool. Ethan mentioned you have a little startup. Something like that. I didn't correct her. There was no point. The ceremony was at 3 p.m. Beautiful, traditional, exactly what you'd expect from a $400,000 wedding. The reception started at 5 p.m. Cocktail hour in the main hall while the wedding party took photos. I was in the bridal suite with Lauren and her sisters when I heard Ethan's voice through the wall. The groomsmen's suite was adjacent, separated by a thin partition. So what's your sister like? One of the groomsmen asked. We haven't really met her. Alexis? She's fine. Ethan's voice was casual, slightly dismissive. She does her own thing. Not really close. What's her thing? She plays business with her friends. Cute little startup or whatever. Tech stuff I don't really understand. They laughed. She calls herself a CO, Ethan continued. I could hear the smirk in his voice. Has like 10 employees or something. Websites and data I don't know. Very millennial. Hey, everyone starts somewhere, another groomsman said diplomatically. Sure. I mean it's harmless. She's happy doing her thing. Not everyone has traditional ambitions. Michelle glanced at me. I kept adjusting my dress, face neutral. Doesn't that bother you? She whispered. Not really. At 5:15 p.m., guests moved into the main reception hall for cocktail hour. The venue had enormous screens positioned throughout the space, displaying a rotating slideshow of Ethan and Lauren's photos. At 5:47 p.m., the venue coordinator made an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause the slideshow briefly for the 6 p.m. news update. It's our signature service, keeping our guests connected to the world during your celebration. The screens switched from wedding photos to CNN. I was at the bar ordering water when the anchor's voice filled the hall. Breaking news from Silicon Valley this evening. In what's being called the largest acquisition in tech industry history, Datacorp has purchased AI analytics company NextGen Analytics for $4.3 billion. The room continued its conversations. Wedding guests didn't typically care about tech news. The company's founder, 29-year-old Alexis Monroe, becomes one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the technology sector. I took a sip of water. Monroe, who dropped out of college at 20 to launch NextGen from her dorm room, built the company into a powerhouse with clients including Microsoft, Amazon, and 7 Fortune 500 companies. The conversations were quieting. People were glancing at the screens. My photo appeared. Professional headshot from last month's TechCrunch interview. At just 29, Monroe's 67% ownership stake means she'll personally receive approximately $2.9 billion from the acquisition. She'll also join Datacorp's board of directors and continue leading NextGen as an autonomous division. Complete silence now. We're joined by tech analyst Marcus Chen for reaction. Marcus, this is extraordinary for someone so young. The analyst appeared on screen. Absolutely, Jennifer. Alexis Monroe is a generational talent. Her AI algorithms have revolutionized predictive analytics. Companies using NextGen software have seen customer retention increase by an average of 61%. The technology is years ahead of anything else in the market. I kept my eyes on my water glass. What makes this acquisition particularly notable, the analyst continued, is that Monroe turned down offers of $1.2 billion and $2.8 billion before accepting $4.3 billion. She held out because she knew the company's value would continue rising. That level of confidence and business acumen at 29 is remarkable. Someone grabbed my arm. That's you, she whispered. Alexis Monroe. That's you. Yes. You just sold your company for $4 billion? $4.3 billion. Her face went white. What they couldn't see from the CNN segment. Tuesday morning, 4 days ago, I'd sat in Datacorp's headquarters in Palo Alto. Across the mahogany conference table, their CEO, COO, CFO, and 3 board members. Ms. Monroe, the CEO said, we're prepared to make our final offer. $4.3 billion all cash. You join our board with full voting rights. NextGen operates as an autonomous division with you as president. You retain complete authority over product development and hiring. What about my current team? Every employee keeps their position. Stock options convert to Datacorp equity at favorable rates. No one loses their job. And the IP? Remains under NextGen's control. You have final say on how the technology is deployed or licensed. I'd reviewed the terms for 3 hours. My legal team had reviewed them for 3 days. I'll sign. The room had actually applauded. Wednesday I'd spent 11 hours with lawyers finalizing paperwork. The acquisition documents were 847 pages. I read every word. Thursday morning my CFO called. Alexis, the wire transfer just cleared. $2.9 billion is in your account. I'd stared at my phone, not quite believing it despite having negotiated every detail. Also, CNN wants an exclusive interview. They're running a segment on the acquisition tomorrow evening. Tomorrow's my brother's wedding. I know. But they want to film today and air tomorrow. It's your call. I'd agreed to a 30-minute interview. Answered questions about the technology, the acquisition, my plans for the future. The interviewer asked about my family. Do they understand what you've built? No. Have you shared your success with them? They've never asked about my work. That must be difficult. It's clarifying. You learn who's interested in you versus interested in what you can do for them. Friday, CNN's production team called. We're airing the segment Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's our lead business story. That's fine. I'd known Ethan's reception started at 5 p.m. Cocktail hour ran until 6:30 p.m. The timing wasn't accidental. The CNN segment continued on every screen in the reception hall. Monroe's success story is particularly notable given her non-traditional background, the analyst was saying. She attended state school on partial scholarship, worked multiple jobs, built the initial algorithm in a college library. The anchor cut back in. We're also showing exclusive footage from our interview with Monroe yesterday. My face filled the screens. The interview had been in NextGen's office. Glass walls, modern design, the San Francisco skyline behind me. CNN anchor's voice. You dropped out of college at 20. That must have been a difficult decision. My recorded response. My family thought I was making a mistake. They wanted me to finish my degree, get a traditional job. But I knew the technology I'd built had the potential to transform an entire industry. Sometimes you have to trust your vision even when everyone around you doubts it. In the reception hall I heard something crash. Turned to see Ethan's champagne glass in pieces on the marble floor. His face had gone completely white. Not pale white like someone had drained every drop of blood from his body. Lauren stood beside him, staring at the screens with her mouth open. Dad had frozen mid-conversation, his expression cycling through confusion, shock, and something that looked like horror. Mom's wine glass slipped from her fingers. Red wine spread across her cream-colored dress. She didn't seem to notice. The CNN segment continued. Anchor. Your company serves Fortune 500 clients. Microsoft, Amazon, major banks. How did you convince such large enterprises to trust a startup? Me. Results. Our AI consistently outperformed every competitor by a margin of 35 to 60%. When you demonstrate clear ROI, companies pay attention regardless of your age or background. Analyst. What's remarkable is that Monroe funded the company's early growth almost entirely through revenue. She only raised venture capital once the business model was proven. That level of capital efficiency is virtually unheard of in today's startup culture. Michelle grabbed my arm again. Everyone's staring at you. He was right. 300 wedding guests had turned away from the screens to look at me. The venue coordinator appeared, looking panicked. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. Should I turn off the news feed? It's fine, I said quietly. On screen the segment was wrapping up. Anchor. Alexis Monroe, 29 years old, $2.9 billion from this acquisition. Marcus, what's next for someone who's achieved this level of success so young? Analyst. Monroe's joining Datacorp's board, which gives her significant influence over a $50 billion company. She's also mentioned philanthropic interests, education technology, closing the opportunity gap for first-generation college students. I expect we'll be hearing her name for decades to come. The segment ended. The screen switched back to wedding photos. The silence in the hall was absolute. Ethan's best man, a guy named Jason, broke it first. Ethan, your sister just sold her company for $4 billion? Ethan couldn't speak. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Lauren found her voice. You said she had a little startup. 10 employees. I thought. Ethan's voice cracked. She never said. She's on CNN, Jason said, pulling out his phone. It's trending on Twitter. Hashtag Alexis Monroe. Has 50,000 tweets. TechCrunch, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. Everyone's covering this. Dad pushed through the crowd toward me. His face was red. Alexis. What the hell is going on? Datacorp acquired my company. The news broke today. For $4.3 billion? Yes. Your worth. He couldn't finish the sentence. $2.9 billion after taxes. Roughly. Mom appeared beside him, wine-stained dress forgotten. When were you planning to tell us? I wasn't. Why not? Because you never asked. A man in an expensive suit approached. I recognized him, Robert Ashford, owner of Ashford Estate. I'd met him twice at tech industry events. Ms. Monroe. He extended his hand. Robert Ashford. I apologize for not greeting you earlier. I didn't realize you were attending. I wanted to personally congratulate you on the DataCore acquisition. Extraordinary work. Thank you. I also wanted to mention that Ashford Properties has been exploring AI solutions for property management and market analysis. If NextGen takes on projects of our scale, we'd be very interested in discussing a consultation. Have your technology director contact my office. I'm transitioning leadership, but my team can handle new clients. Excellent. He glanced at Ethan, then back to me. Enjoy the celebration. He walked away. Ethan made a sound like air escaping a tire. Lauren's father, Richard Palmer, the real estate developer, approached next. His expression had shifted from confusion to calculation. Alexis, I don't think we've been properly introduced. Richard Palmer. Lauren's father. Nice to meet you. I've been following NextGen's growth in the trade publications. Remarkable company. I had no idea you were Ethan's sister. He didn't mention it? No. Richard glanced at Ethan with something that looked like disappointment. No, he didn't. In fact, he mentioned you worked in tech support. Common misconception. Indeed. Richard handed me a card. Palmer Properties has significant data analytics needs across our portfolio. I'd love to discuss how your technology might benefit our operations. Perhaps after the wedding festivities. Of course. He nodded and walked back to his wife, who immediately pulled him into intense conversation. Jason was still scrolling on his phone. Holy shit. Business Insider just posted an article. It says you turned down lower offers because you knew the company was worth more. You rejected $2.8 billion 6 months ago. The company was growing fast. I knew we could get a better deal. You rejected $2.8 billion. He said it slowly, like testing whether the words made sense. Most people would have taken that immediately. I'm not most people. Ethan finally found his voice. You let me talk about you like you were nobody. In front of my groomsmen. You talked about me like I was nobody because that's what you believed. Because you never told me. You never asked. Kept my tone level calm. Ethan, when's the last time you asked me about my work? About what I was building? About what mattered to me? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Couldn't answer. Exactly. I looked around at the crowd of faces staring at us. This isn't the time or place for this conversation. It's your wedding day. Congratulations. I'm happy for you and Lauren. I started to walk away. Wait. Lauren's voice stopped me. You're worth almost $3 billion? Yes. And you're wearing a $200 bridesmaid dress from David's Bridal. It's what you chose for the bridesmaids. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. The immediate consequences rippled through the reception within minutes. Guests who'd ignored me during cocktail hour suddenly wanted introductions. Business cards appeared. Investment pitches started. Ms. Monroe, I'm Patricia Chin. I run a venture fund focused on AI startups. Ms. Monroe, Jonathan White here. I'm with Sterling Capital if you're interested in angel investing. Ms. Monroe, I'm Sarah Martinez from Tribune Tech. We'd love to feature you in our Innovators series. I was polite to each of them. Collected cards. Made no commitments. At the head table, Ethan sat frozen. Lauren kept glancing between him and her father, her expression difficult to read. Dad pulled me aside. Alexis, we need to talk about this. What would you like to discuss? Everything. You're a billionaire. You sold a company for $4 billion. When did this happen? I started the company 9 years ago. Sold it 3 days ago. 9 years. He said it like an accusation. 9 years and you never mentioned this. I mentioned it dozens of times. You weren't listening. His face flushed. That's not fair. Isn't it? I told you I'd raised venture funding. You said it sounded risky. I told you I'd signed Fortune 500 clients. You asked if I was still able to afford my rent. I told you Microsoft was using our software. You changed the subject to Ethan's latest case at his law firm. I didn't realize the scale. Because you didn't ask. You assumed my work was small because I'm not Ethan. Because I didn't go to Princeton. Because I dropped out of state. Mom appeared. Alexis, that's not what your father meant. Then what did he mean? Neither of them answered. The escalating consequences arrived over the next 48 hours. Sunday morning, Ethan called. I almost didn't answer. Alexis. We need to talk. I'm listening. Lauren's father asked why I never mentioned that my sister ran, a multi-billion-dollar AI company. His voice was strained. He said it would have been relevant information when I was asking for his blessing to propose. How is my career relevant to your engagement? He thinks I'm either dishonest or completely unaware of my own family. Neither makes me look good. I'm sorry that's difficult for you. Are you? Because you let this news break at my wedding. On CNN. In front of 300 people. I didn't control the timing. CNN chose when to air the segment. You did the interview the day before my wedding. That wasn't an accident. You're right. It wasn't. Kept my voice level. But Ethan, think about why I chose that timing. When's the last time our family gathered where I wasn't invisible? Where I wasn't the afterthought, the person whose accomplishments didn't matter? Silence. This was the first time in my entire life where I couldn't be ignored, I continued. Not because I forced it. Not because I made a scene. But because CNN put my face on every screen and spoke the truth you couldn't be bothered to learn. That's cruel. That's honest. He hung up. Monday morning, Dad called. Alexis, I need to tell you something. Okay. Richard Palmer called me. Lauren's father. He asked if I'd ever invested in your company. And I said no. Yes, why not? I didn't have a good answer. Dad's voice was rough. He said if he'd known his future son-in-law's sister was building something that valuable, he would have invested immediately. He said my failure to recognize your potential showed problematic judgment. That's harsh. He also mentioned it to several of his business associates at the wedding. I've gotten 3 calls from people in my network asking why I never talked about you. Why I never mentioned having a daughter in tech. Why I invested in Ethan's career but not yours. I said nothing. I'm losing credibility, Alexis. In my professional circles, I'm known as the guy who had a billionaire daughter and didn't even know it. Now you know how I felt every time you talked about Ethan's achievements for an hour and never asked about mine. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. He hung up. The final consequences crystallized over the following week. Tuesday, Lauren called. Not Ethan, Lauren. Alexis, this is awkward, but I need to tell you something. Okay. My father suggested Ethan and I postpone moving in together. Why? He thinks Ethan's judgment is questionable. He says someone who doesn't recognize their own sister's success probably isn't detail-oriented enough to be a good attorney. Her voice shook. He's reconsidering whether he wants Ethan involved in Palmer Properties' legal work. Lauren, that's not fair to Ethan. Maybe not. But my father pays $800,000 annually in legal fees to Goldstein and Associates specifically for Ethan's work. If he pulls that business, Ethan's position at the firm becomes tenuous. This is getting out of hand. My father also asked about you. If you'd consider advising Palmer Properties on AI implementation. He said he'd pay $2 million annually for consulting. I'm not interested. I told him you'd say that. But he wanted me to ask. She paused. Ethan's furious. At you, at me, at my father. He thinks everyone's choosing your success over our relationship. That's not what's happening. Isn't it? At our wedding reception, 20 people asked for introductions to you. 3 people asked Ethan about his legal work. He felt invisible at his own wedding. Now he knows what that feels like. She hung up. I didn't contact my family for 2 weeks. Then Mom texted, please. We need to talk. All of us together. We met at a restaurant. Neutral territory, public space, no opportunity for dramatics. Ethan looked terrible. Thinner, dark circles under his eyes, his usual confidence completely absent. Dad looked older. Tired. Mom had been crying before she arrived. I could tell from her eyes. We ordered food. Nobody spoke for 5 minutes. Finally, Ethan broke. I'm sorry. I waited. Not just for what I said at the wedding. For everything. For 20 years of dismissing you. His voice cracked. You were building something extraordinary and I called it playing business. You were changing an entire industry and I thought you worked in tech support. You believed what you wanted to believe. I believed what was convenient. It was easier to think you were struggling with a small startup than to admit I'd completely ignored your actual life. Dad leaned forward. Alexis, I owe you an apology too. I invested $50,000 in Ethan's Princeton application through an alumni donation. I gave him money for internships, housing, networking. You asked for $3,500 for a coding bootcamp and I said no. I remember. That bootcamp changed your life. The instructor there connected you to your first investors. If I'd supported you the way I supported Ethan. He stopped. I failed you. Completely. Mom's tears started again. I was so focused on Ethan's traditional success that I couldn't see yours. You were doing something I didn't understand, so I dismissed it. That's inexcusable. I took a breath. I appreciate the apologies. I do. But apologies don't erase 20 years. We know, Ethan said quickly. We're not asking for forgiveness. We're asking for a chance to do better. What does that look like? Honestly, I don't know. Ethan met my eyes. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if we can fix this. But I'd like to try. Not because you're successful. Not because you're wealthy. But because you're my sister and I've been a terrible brother. I considered his words carefully. Here's what I need, I said. First, I need you to understand that I'm not going to fund your ventures or give you business opportunities. Richard Palmer wants to hire you because of our connection. That's not my problem to fix. You build your own career. Ethan nodded. I understand. Second, I need distance from the family dynamic that made me invisible for 20 years. Mom, you've called 4 times asking why I didn't tell you about meeting with the president or speaking at the World Economic Forum. You want involvement now. But you weren't involved for 9 years. Mom nodded, wiping tears. That's fair. Third, I need you to understand that we're not in competition. Ethan, you're a good attorney. Your work matters. My success doesn't diminish yours. But you have to stop measuring yourself against my net worth. I don't know how to do that, Ethan admitted. Every news article about you reminds me that you're 29 and worth $3 billion while I'm 32 and make $185,000 a year. Then you need therapy. Seriously. I've been in therapy since I was 23. It's the only reason I survived building a company while being invisible to my own family. You're in therapy? Mom looked shocked. Weekly sessions. Dr. Jennifer Park. She's extraordinary. We don't know anything about you, Dad said quietly. Your actual life, your struggles, what matters to you. We know the version of you we invented. Not the real you. No, I agreed. You don't. Ethan leaned forward. Can we change that? Slowly. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Maybe. But it has to be genuine. Not because I'm wealthy. Not because knowing me benefits your careers. But because you actually want to know your sister. We do, Mom said. I promise we do. Then prove it. Don't call asking for business introductions. Don't mention my success in your networking conversations. Just be a family. If you can do that, we'll see. They all nodded. We talked for another 2 hours. I explained the early days of NextGen, the failures, the near bankruptcies, the moments I almost gave up. They asked questions. Real questions. About my life, my work, my dreams beyond money. It wasn't a complete fix. Years of invisibility couldn't disappear in one dinner. But it was a start. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new office at Datacorp's headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the Bay Area stretched out below. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Started therapy. First session was brutal but good. Dr. Park is tough. Thank you for the recommendation. I smiled. Another text from Mom. Your father and I are planning a small dinner. Just the 4 of us. No business talk. No networking. Just family. Would you come? I considered it. Typed back. I'm free next month. But I mean it. No business talk. No asking about Datacorp. No networking requests. Just us. Mom's response, I promise. Just us. A third text from my assistant. Board meeting in 10 minutes. Datacorp wants your input on the Q4 AI strategy. I stood, straightened my blazer and walked to the boardroom. The work continued. The company grew. The influence expanded. But for the first time in 20 years I had something else. A family trying to actually see me. Not the version they'd invented. Not the convenient narrative. But me. It wouldn't be easy. Some damage might never fully heal. Trust takes years to rebuild. But they were trying. And I was willing to let them try. That was enough. For now, that was enough.